What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Lauren Halldorson. She's a competitive natural bodybuilder and the owner of a highly successful competition prep and posing coaching business. Lauren has a compelling story behind her natural bodybuilding journey and went through a series of very challenging struggles over her last 2024 competition season. In our conversation, she opens up about all of it, sharing the serious struggle that she experienced and what it was like to get through it. She also shares why her love of natural bodybuilding is rooted so deeply, stemming all the way back from when she was growing up. This is an incredible episode, and I know you're going to love it. Before we get started, if you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. All right, let's get into it. To give everyone who's listening an idea, where are you right now in your personal natural bodybuilding timeline? So I'm thinking, are you prepping for a show? Are you in your improvement season? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, great question. I am currently bulking for quite an extended period of time. I don't quite have another show set in place. I think the earliest that I would do would be fall 2027. And the reason being is I really want to have a physique that is noticeably improved going into this next season. And I don't always do this, but I want to almost earn going into prep, like having a certain amount of consistency time, certain like life circumstances set up, and then also noticeable like physique changes to the point where my coach and I both make the decision that like everything is set up and ready for like prep to start. So until those points kind of hit and having enough growth, that's when I'll decide to prep again.
Awesome. So a couple things in there that I'm interested in. So you mentioned you want to make sure that there's certain life circumstances that are where you'd like them to be, as well as the physique improvements happening the way that you'd like them. So maybe starting with the latter, can you elaborate on like what kind of physique improvements you're working towards right now and what it's taking to accomplish them?
Absolutely. So right now, my main focus is just denser everywhere. And it feels like a little bit of like a loaded thing. Of course, we can't grow everything at once, but I've given myself enough time that we're going to have different like improvement segments, different cycles of different focuses. The feedback from my last show was more density throughout my back. And surprisingly that my legs were overpowering my upper body, but I think that was more of like a leanness issue than it is an actual muscularity issue. I'm very like wide lats. I've got some solid shoulders, but they can always be bigger. And I've got big glutes. And so I've always found that my quads are lacking. So I'd love to come in just with like big, dense legs because I've always hated training them. So really about what's requiring me to get there is not only like, of course, intensity in the gym, trusting my coach is a huge one. And just being like really, really tied into him has helped a ton. And then just straight up making bodybuilding a higher priority in my life. It's so easy in an off season to just go, yeah, I just have to eat and just have to train. But I really think there needs to be intentionality around like what type of physique do you want to have and what's the actual like requirement of priority that is required to get there. Right. So you can't just kind of lackadaisically be like, yeah, I'll eat and yeah, I'll train. Like there needs to be intentionality around both those things for you to actually make the gains, for it to be noticeable, especially as a natural athlete. Yeah. And I think that you do that really well. Like I love watching your training videos on Instagram where like you train with so much intention all the time. And it's like every time there's a handful of people I can think of off the hop that do that really well. And it's just like their physique on stage shows it. I think bodybuilding is an interesting sport because you can have those times in prep where like, yes, you're super dialed in, and in your improvement season, you don't need to have as much dialed in this, but there still needs to be intention and you still need to behave like a bodybuilder.
Yeah. Something that I've found for myself actually is when you're in the middle of an improvement season, if you're like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years between shows and you don't exactly have the bullseye in sight, the target in sight of a show to target, it can be easy to kind of get like feel like you're lost out in space. It's like, I know I need to be training hard, but it's like, the real goal, the reason, or I would say, one of the targets that I'm aiming for in doing this. It's so far away. It's easy to get lost. And I find myself struggling with that somewhat regularly myself. That's for sure.
Yeah. I hear that a lot from people too. And that's actually why I tie myself into a lot of shows in my off season, whether it's as a coach or whether it's just going to visit and supporting friends. I love getting around the energy of a show. So sometimes if I recommend to my clients, like if you're feeling that way, like go to a show, go see, not in a space of like you need to compare yourself to what's on stage, but like remind yourself of why you're doing this. And sometimes that can really help to like reignite things. You just get like, of course, you've been to shows, you've been backstage, you've been coaching, you've been competing, and you can like the energy is just like palpable, and you're just like, oh, right, this is why I love this sport. And people are on stage winning and crying and disappointed and like fired up and inspired and all those things. So I find that for me, like, and for my clients, like really helps.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what's interesting about that too is, I mean, it's 2025, and a lot of these shows, if you can't go to them locally, you can watch the live streams. And funny enough, that's what I've been doing the last several weekends, is seeing what live streams I can find and watch. And even that, it's not the same as seeing a show in person, but if you can't see a show live, um, to your point, I found that that for me, just watching them virtually has been a way to kind of keep the excitement going, and especially like in an improvement season or an early stage of prep, or even when you're like in the heart of prep and you're just trying to psych yourself up a little bit.
Absolutely.
Um, that was when I don't know if you remember this, but I think the first time that I bumped into you was backstage. What was when I was competing in 2023. I think it would have been at the WNBF Ontario and then the Calgary later on. That was when I think I remember bumping into you backstage. You were helping out with the WNBF. So there you go.
Yeah, small world.
Definitely. How long have you been in your improvement season? Like, when did you end your last prep?
Yeah, I ended my last prep at the end of October last year in 2024. I cut my season short after some health issues, and I'm really thankful that I did that. The whole like stage is always there. Like I always preach that, but then it was like I need to walk my talk, and it was such a smart decision. I was happy I did it, and I would say, truthfully, that I've probably been in my improvement season for a good like 2 to 3 months up, like for now, and we're recording this in like September. And the reason I say that is because from that time that I ended that season to like mid to summer-ish, I was floundering pretty good. And it was just like I had a really hard time with my post show. I had a really hard time kind of reigniting that spark in the gym. I know it's there. It's been there my entire life. And I was just like, I actually need to give myself some breathing room to get reacquainted with this, to gym in a different way. And I know I kind of clocked, like, if you want to have improvements, you need to behave like a bodybuilder. And I knew that in that time, it was like, I need to chill for a sec. And I know that bodybuilding, like I'll be able to pick this back up. And that's why I didn't put the pressure of like within like a year or within 2 years, I need to compete again. It was like, I need to give myself some breathing room, so that I can come back to this with a ton of energy and intentionality. And I feel like I'm doing that now so that I can grow. And I had full ownership of doing that. So in reality, my improvement season so far has been short, and I'm excited to see where it continues to go. Actually, like eating well, eating enough. That's kind of the caveat for me. That's the hard part, is like just eating enough food and then training hard. And I love doing upper body. So it's like, I need to get it and do some lower body days. And so now that I'm doing that, things are going to come together with more time.
It's funny. I kind of, like, we all have our struggles. I kind of wish I had your struggle, which is, hey, I can't, I got to get in more food. I'm the opposite. So like when I'm in the middle of my improvement season, it's like, dude, you chill out with the food. It's like, we need to make sure we don't get too heavy here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really curious if maybe we could actually talk a little bit more about, you mentioned you cut your 2024 season short. I
Mhm.
want to know more about your 2024 season. I also want to
Yeah.
know more about previous seasons, if we can. But
Totally.
something that you mentioned was your 2024 season. You cut it short because of
Mhm.
health issues. You're glad you did it. The time after that, you're not considering it as your improvement season, kind of more of as an extended recovery phase
Yes.
following the 2024 season. So I'm wondering if maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, focus in on that a little bit.
Mhm.
So can you give some background of your 2024 season, what the prep was like, and maybe kind of segue us into the health issues that you mentioned that you ran into partway through the prep or partway through the season?
Yeah, totally. So that prep, I went in with so much fire. I had a huge personal vendetta going into that show, which was like awesome. I had come out of actually in 2023, I left a domestic violence situation. And coming out of that, I like completely changed so many layers of my life. It bolstered my confidence a ton being able to leave a situation like that. And it really prioritized like that the parts of me that are really strong, and I love having my outside match those inside parts of me. And so I came into my improvement season actually like guns a-blazing. After that all settled down, I had a great improvement season. Leading into prep, felt really confident. My coach and I at the time had a plan for like a pre-prep positioning phase, then a little maintenance phase, and then led into a bigger prep. So for me, I frame all of that as prep so that my intentionality is really, really high. So for me, I started prep kind of in January, February-ish for planning to compete in, I believe, the fall season, really. So I competed in Washington State Naturals. I was a WNBF sanctioned show at the time, WNBF Calgary show, and I would plan to compete at Worlds as an amateur. And I ended up I cut Worlds. I was still coaching, so I went, but I cut Worlds and I was very thankful. But through that prep, actually the pacing was great. That was my best look. I was starting to get like drier and drier. I was keeping my size. Things were going really great. And then at the time, I actually made a decision to focus on my business a little bit more as a coach, and I got a business coach. And what I ended up doing, and I take literally full responsibility for this, was I overloaded my plate because I was feeling great. You know, you lose a few pounds, you're like, yeah, my adherence is high. Like I'm eating great food and I'm doing my cardio and like I feel like a badass. And then I was like, I can do it all. And I layered some business coaching on, which was an incredible decision for my business, but both at the same time, something had to give. I actually grew my business quite significantly during that time in prep. And then I didn't manage my stress at all. I let my personal health just like tank. And my stress was so high. I was like, yeah, I'm going to like grow my business, get more clients, like build better systems. I was even going to potentially go to like a business retreat that I had actually like earned my way to just from my business growth. I'm glad that I decided to not do that. Not because it was a great retreat, but I just needed to prioritize bodybuilding a little bit. And what I did was I was so stressed about so much that my digestion completely stopped. So I was incredibly constipated for so long. I think it was like a little bit of an issue. And then it was like, okay, this isn't the most abnormal thing to experience in prep. Eating less foods, a little bit more high volume, a little bit more fiber. And I just got backed up, tried some laxative things, just like Senecot. Nothing was working. And it got to the point where it was like, nothing was really changing in my plan. And I was like, it was kind of like, let's just be patient. And I was like, that's cool. And then I was going on one of my like 5 a.m. morning walks around my neighborhood at the time. And I was so bloated. My skin was sore. Like I looked pregnant and I had like abs on top of this like bloated pregnant belly. And it had been like weeks and I was really, really unwell. And I was actually in so much pain, I couldn't walk. And so I got I think it was like called my mom and was like, can you take me to the hospital? And I went to a hospital local to me that I knew had a CT and was like, hey, I need some serious help. Like I was like writhing in pain. They got me in quick. And for the Canadian healthcare system, when you're in quick, you know that you're in trouble. So it's like, I thought I had like a perforated bowel or something blocked, and so many layers of just like, this isn't okay. So I went for a full CT with contrast, and it was just like, you were just so full of poop. And so I spent a day in the hospital, just, under care, trying to get all that out. And honestly, because of that situation, I was so like fried mentally, because it messes with you, in prep, how you define success is by like pant sizes going down, by new lines, deeper lines, adherence. And it was really, really hard because it's like I wasn't hungry because nothing was going out. So I had a really hard time adhering even to my diet. Like I would get my protein in because that was my priority, but I was like, dude, I actually can't eat right now. Like it was such a mess. And then I still was super stressed after that. And I just kind of like fell apart. And I actually struggled with a little bit of like binge eating right before my Calgary show and after into my recovery season. And it's something that I have no shame about, because it's the thing, it's like, it's something that happened. It was a completely new experience for me. And I don't think enough bodybuilders talk about when that actually pops up, because there's so much like shame wrapped around it, especially because we again define success by adherence. So after like being super bloated, I actually, my coach at the time recommended that like I drop the Washington show, because that was kind of like our practice show. And like Calgary and Worlds was our goal. And I was like, screw it. Everything's already booked. We're like 2 weeks out. I'm going to go in no expectations. And I actually ended up winning that show. And it's funny. I look at the circumstances and it's like, you know what? I'm not going to have any opinions on this. The judges chose what they chose. I could, argue for why I deserved to win or why I didn't deserve to win or whatever. But, and I was very grateful to win. That was really a really cool experience. And I was just at that show this last weekend because they had brought me back to present awards because I had won last year. And then I remember coming out of that show and I was just like sobbing coming out of that show, because I was like, I didn't deserve to win. And I was just such an emotional mess because I hadn't taken care of myself. And my regulation was really poor, purely for just like lack of prioritization on my end. And going into Calgary, I kind of had to make a decision. I had a team. I think I had like 18 athletes in Calgary. Only one prep athlete, but the rest were posing. So I was like there all day between the 2 days, the amateur show and the pro show. And it was like, I had to make a decision about who I wanted to show up as, and what ball I was willing to put down. And so I decided to take the foot off the gas a little bit for my own journey, so that I could make sure that my clients had the best experience that they could. Because at that point I was like, I can choose whether this is going to be about me, or I can choose whether this is going to be about the community that I want to build. And so I chose the community that I wanted to build. And I ended up like, straight up, there was a few extra pastries in there. And I look at those Calgary pictures and I was like, ooh. And it's not a physique that I'm proud of, but I'm really proud of the decisions that I made and all the learning that I did that season. I think there's a few people that have like talked about this semi-recently, that I'm really, really proud of for myself to do, and kind of the peak of that. And it makes me emotional thinking about, I remember, I'm a very big advocate for the women's muscularity categories. And in Canada, like we just, I don't think we have enough. Like, I'm just like, women get bigger. Like it's awesome being so strong because we're also strong on the insides. Like, let your outsides match your insides. Like, that's so cool. I just love it. And so lots of bodybuilding athletes actually gravitate to the Calgary show because it's the biggest show. There's the greatest chance on the amateur bodybuilding side for women to get your pro card, and like there's good competition there. And I remember originally they had 6 athletes signed up, and the pro card requirements for WNBF for women's bodybuilding are 5 athletes. So they had 6, and then they had 2 drop out like 2 days before. And so they were like, unfortunately, this is the only category in this entire show of over 200 athletes that doesn't have a pro card. And I sat up and I was like, how many more do you need? And they're like, 1. And I'm like, I will throw my weird physique ass up there just so someone else can have a chance of a pro card. And any of the personal stuff around, like, I'm ashamed of this body, like I'm embarrassed about like the decisions I made, it went out the window, because I was like, you know what, this isn't about me. And this season can mean something to the community. For like, I remember like Roanna won her pro card, and it was like her debut after, and she's a fantastic judge. And she came back after like 10, 12 years of not competing. And she came back and won her pro card. She gave me the biggest hug. And I was just like, you did that. And like, I got 5th, I got this like black medal, and I was like, cool, whatever. But the fact that she was able to experience that, and she was very deserving. So all in all, that season was very teaching for me about my priorities, how much priority and effort like different things take, especially as someone who wants to do things well. I don't just want to be a schmuck. Like, I don't want to step on stage like a schmuck. I don't want to coach like a schmuck. Like, this is important, and I want to treat it as such. And so that's why I chose what I did. Learned some really good lessons about business, capacity, taking care of myself, who I want to be as an athlete. And it really tied into like why I chose such a long off season, so that I can have so many areas of life settled, and actually make a very conscious and informed decision around my capacity coming into like when I want to prep again.
Right. It's interesting to note that, we can find ourselves. I've experienced this before too, where it's like I feel like I'm running on a high, and I can add all of these extra things onto my plate. And then we don't realize in the moment sometimes that, our energy is finite and eventually we hit that wall inevitably. It's like something's got to give at some point. But there's a lot there. Um, I I'm thinking back to like the incredible amount of discomfort that you must have been like around your midsection, and also the psychological stress having to go to the hospital and like it being that serious. And like it's one thing to experience that when you're not in like a prep, but when you're in a prep and you're getting really lean at that point and you're already kind of thinking a little bit, the way that we think is a little bit different than when we're not in prep.
Yeah.
um, Plus it's physically uncomfortable. Plus as you noted, we're evaluating our progress by how our physique is changing. And then if all of a sudden things are looking off, then that can be a mental, emotional roller coaster. So I can only imagine how distressing that must have been. Did they give you a diagnosis as to like why that concretely happened, or did they kind of just say like, yeah, you were really stressed, it had something to do with stress, or like was there something else under this behind the scenes that was going on with your body, or like what did they think was the reason why things ended up the way they did?
They had no answers. All my labs came back normal. And like,
Wow.
as soon as my stress level came down, everything was normal again. Um, yeah, I'm a big fan of like somatics, like body somatics. And so when you look at where different things innervate based on like where your vagus nerve is, and that controls a lot of your digestion, and where that like clicks with your brain in your sympathetic nervous system. Of course, you don't digest when you're in distress the same way, and just extended chronic periods of that really just shut down my digestion. They were like, I don't know, maybe eat more fiber. And I sat down and the doctor was like, I'm a bodybuilder. I track my water. I track my
Yeah.
salt. I track what I'm eating, like my fiber, like things have been consistent. And they
Yeah.
were like, so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, good chalking up learning of like, I actually just need to take care of myself a little bit more. I think if I gave myself more like grace to like take a breath, the outcome would have been so different. I love the saying of like, there's some preps that grow you externally and there's some preps that grow you internally. And that was an internal prep for me. And I'm happy that I got like smacked across the face, like so aggressively with that lesson, because I would so much rather have like one season of like crazy discomfort and like discomfort in my business and discomfort in my life and discomfort physically and emotionally and with prep and as an athlete and all those things, and learn those lessons rather than like try and stumble through the next like 5 years smacking my head against the wall like trying to learn the same thing. Yeah, I would just way rather learn that lesson almost the hard way one time than softly like throughout 5 years, if that makes sense.
I get it. My 2021 prep was along those lines. It was by the time I got to the end, I was like running on fumes. I'd been running on fumes for like the 8 weeks going into that show. And then I didn't like, I made some weird dietary decisions like 3 days before, like when you
Oh
probably
no.
shouldn't be making weird dietary decisions. Like I was just second guessing myself so much, so hungry, like how it is.
Oh yeah.
And I spiked up my fiber intake too much leading up to the show, and like my sodium intake was so high, like I was just craving like these like weird savory kind of flavors like mustard and hot sauce, like the weird stuff that we get
Yes.
obsessed with when we're in prep. And I looked so weird when I got on stage, like just bizarre. Like I hadn't been dieting for the past 12 weeks. So like it was
Yeah.
weird. They talk about how like peaks can go wrong. It's like I've never showed anybody the pictures before. I will
Yeah.
one day, but they're pretty gnarly. But I had that kind of experience. The whole thing was really kind of like a mental roller coaster, mental and emotional roller coaster for me. But I found that the reason I bring this up is, to your point, the next prep I did in 2023 went way easier because it was like, hey, well, now I know what not to do for the next one.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
think that goes in alignment with what you mentioned. I think it's really cool about your experience at Calgary, and when you said, hey, I'm going to go compete with it. Was it women's bodybuilding?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, hey, I'll go do it, regardless of how I'm feeling about like my own physique at this point. That's a pattern that I've noticed actually with conversing with different people, is that oftentimes the best experiences end up coming not always from like the outcome, as in like the medal that we get or like how we actually end up looking on stage sometimes. But like when we start looking outward, like, hey, I can do this for like people around me. That was actually something I learned from Jeff Alberts, is like
Mhm.
he had this big kind of pivotal moment in his journey where this was like the season he ended up winning his pro card. He had done so many seasons of not winning, and he was like so upset about it, and like he put so much pressure on himself to go and to win every time. And then it was the first season where he's like, you know, I'm gonna think about like other things, like having a good time when I'm prepping and
Yeah.
competing, and like going on online and helping other people, like before he was coaching, just like, you know, conversing with people, helping other people out. And he ended up having not only the best experience up to that point, but he ended up actually winning, which is, you know, it's ironic. But I think that goes along with your own experience too. But it still must have been really, really tough to cut your season short if, like, I think it was the Worlds that you ended up
Mhm.
saying, like, hey, um, let's call it at this point. What was it, do you think? Like, that was there something in particular where you're leading up to that last show where it was like, okay, like, this draws the line, like I need to stop here? Like, did the experience with the digestive issues you were having, were they coming up again, or was it like you're just so burnt out by that point, or what was it that concretely led you to say like, hey, like I think the best thing to do is to call it at this point?
I was so burnt out. It was a thing. And like my physique was a little janky. And it was one of those like, I almost want to be respectful of stage, and like Worlds is Worlds. And I didn't want my first time going onto Worlds looking like a schmuck. And like, because I went to Worlds, I saw the caliber of even the amateur athletes, and I was like, okay, I made a great decision. But the straw that broke the camel's back for me was just straight up like I was so dysregulated, that I wasn't in a spot where I had any ownership of following the plan. I was just kind of like, screw all this. I need a break, like, and I need it. I need it yesterday.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode to let you know about the Natural Bodybuilding Society. It's a special community that I host on Discord that's exclusive to natural bodybuilders. The community is meant to be a special place for natural bodybuilders to connect, find relatability, learn from each other, make friends, share progress, and support each other. If you're a natural bodybuilder watching right now thinking, hey, this sounds pretty sweet, then you should join. Just hit the link in the description below, join the group, and I'll see you in there.
And so I made the decision to pull, and it was so freeing. It was a lot. It was hard, and I'm so thankful that I still went, because I still want to experience Worlds, and I had an incredible experience and actually made some connections at that show that have blossomed into other connections. And it just ballooned out, just very circumstantial, in that weekend. It was great to see. And I, being realistic with myself, like looking at my physique and not in a like, I don't belong up there, but it was just like, no, I actually want to go up and like, when I compete at Worlds again, or for the first time, I should say, I want to go out swinging and be someone that either people are really enjoying watching on stage or a physique to watch out for. Like, I feel like Worlds deserves that respect. Not that any other shows don't. They can mean different things for different people, but that's what Worlds means to me. So,
To give everyone an idea, just how long from the start, like when you first started your pre-prep diet,
mhm.
to when you decided like, hey, let's call it at this point, how long was the entirety of that?
Yeah. So from end of January, beginning of February ish, all the way to the end of October. So
Right.
what's that? The
9,
second
10.
month to the 10th month. So eight months straight, 8, 9 months straight. I know some people prep for longer, but that for me was enough because I didn't take any breaks. Like I didn't do, like we had some refeeds, but I didn't take enough like care time for myself. So that was enough for me. I think I could prep longer in the future, but because I'm way more equipped for how to take care of myself in that process.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a huge marathon, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting is something that I've actually been thinking about too, from hearing like stories like yours and others, is I'm planning out my next season too, and I'm trying to decide like how many shows am I going to compete
Mhm.
in X amount of time, and considering how long the prep is going to be, I'm almost thinking like maybe I'll like intentionally plan, like I was thinking before, like 4 or 5 shows. But now I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3, because it's kind of like you get past a certain point and then all of a sudden you're still going, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's not as fun. You get
Yeah.
burnt out after like the 3rd show. I felt that's what I felt like after my last season. I did 4
Mhm.
shows, and after the 3rd one, I was like, man, I could stop.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that even for planning my next season, is maybe like I just, plan to have it do it in a shorter burst, less shows, and have more fun that way. But we'll see. It's still up in the air. Wow. Okay. So crazy. Can you talk now about transitioning into that kind of recovery phase
Mhm.
after after you finished your season? And I know that you initially mentioned that um, I think you floundered a little bit for a little while, and like you needed to kind of allow yourself to decompress from what you described as being a pretty challenging experience overall.
Mhm.
Had the great stuff in it, but challenging nonetheless. Can you talk on that a little bit? Like, what did that look like? What did that recovery phase look like? And how did you feel throughout the process?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good question. I know for me, the floundering looked like binge eating. Like right after show, it was, you have your post show meal, and then I couldn't stop. And it wasn't just like anything and everything. I wasn't going for wings and like for pizza and whatever. It was just like I ate 2 whole sleeves of rice cakes and like couldn't stop. And I'd never experienced that before. So it was scary, I think is the best way to describe it when I was floundering a little bit with that. And I actually got a therapist specifically for that. I could like talk incredibly about my therapist. She's actually a bodybuilder herself, and she specializes in disordered eating and addiction. And so she was like
Wow.
my lifeline in that time. And I actually transitioned coaches as well in that time. And I absolutely adore the coach that I had in that season. And like I respect him incredibly. And I just needed something different. And I snagged a different coach who I continue to work with. And so that was a transition as well. It's like rebuilding a trusting relationship with the coach in like a tough emotional time. And even he gave me the advice. He's like, just let it run its course. Like, we know deeply character wise for you that this isn't a character issue. You're not at root an undisciplined person. So don't like root this behavior. Don't take this behavior super deeply. Don't let this behavior like root into who you are. Let it run its course. Your body obviously needs some stuff. Work with your therapist, have some like homework, things like that to solve through that. And then on the gym side of things, it was just like I was so ashamed of my size. And I didn't get like fat by any means. Like I just was really inflamed, and I did gain body fat, but it wasn't like I didn't balloon up to like 180 pounds or 200 pounds or 250 pounds. And if I did, I did. Like body compositions can always be changed. Like that's not a problem. That's not an issue. The problem was how I was speaking to myself about it. And so I had this narrative in my head that like I wasn't being a bodybuilder. So it's like I had a really hard time behaving like a bodybuilder in the gym, and then like going home and eating not like a bodybuilder. So it was a really weird like identity shatter a little bit for me. But in the gym, really, it was kind of like 1 to 2 times a week. It was winter at the time, and I was just really struggling kind of getting my things together. I actually went and talked to my doctor, and I got diagnosed with depression and ADHD and started some medications for that as well, which completely changed my life. And like this year has been incredible because I feel so much more stable and steady. And knowing that, it gave so much more context to like where I was at. I was like, this makes so much more sense that I'm not just going through like the regular experience. I also have these added layers on of like, hey, I like my pathology leads me to be more pessimistic, and my pathology leads me to be more scatterbrained and less able to focus, blah, blah, blah. So instead of making that an excuse, it was like, okay, now that I know that, I can release this thing of like, this means I'm a bad human. Like this behavior means I'm a bad human. It's like, okay, this is just a thing that's happening. Let's get settled on some medication. And how can I be kind to myself through this? Because in reality, that's what I needed to be. Rewire my brain a little bit. And then it got into like some more walks. And I started going to the gym with my partner again. And he made that really fun to just go back. And it was like, My coach was awesome in just giving me space. I think that was one of the biggest game changers for me in that time, because I'd never experienced anything like that, was really just for him to be like, girl, run your course. Like, you also know your body, you also know what you need to do. Like, and so there's that layer of like grace, but he also had standards for me where he's like, I don't think you understand like how much potential you have in this sport. And it like, there are people that watch you and are inspired by you that like, it sucks seeing that like we're just all waiting for you to like pick this back up. Like, and I'm like, this isn't about me. And it was so like uncomfy to hear the truth of that, and what I like took on as truth. And so I was able to slowly get back into the gym, and it was like kind of 3 times a week, 2 times a week. But I just wasn't like taking it to heart, and I was focusing on my business and focusing on my clients, which was awesome. And then it was like I bought a new condo, I moved, and in that season it was like, okay, once the spring season ended, I was like, I'm so ready to like get back to this full bore, and I did. And it's like, so we upped the eating again. I was just so under eating. The ADHD meds didn't help with that, but it's like I went from my like post show bloat to like I accidentally lost like 12 pounds, like just from like lack of hunger with the ADHD meds and just lack of intentionality and attention to eating like regularly throughout my day. So I lost a bunch of weight, and I was like, okay, let's just figure this out again. Like I've done this once, I've done this many times, I can do this again. So it was just a switch, and I was just like, okay, I just need to meal prep for 1 week. I need to meal prep for tomorrow. And it's like, I just meal prep for tomorrow. I made a slot in my calendar. It's like, I just went to the gym that day. It doesn't matter how good it is or what happens or the weights that I don't need to have any narrative about this, just that I redefine success as completion rather than what my body looked like. And that was a huge thing. I think the transition from out of show into recovery season into off season, whether it's like super smooth or successful or not, I think one of the main priorities is redefining what success is. Because we talked about how in prep it's, physical things and appearance things and size things and scale things. But like, I think in the off season, transitioning to off season, you need to redefine what success is. And I was able to do that after a bit of buffer time, and all the context of the things really helped rewrite my narrative around that and gave me the space to do that. So now it's just like, I need to eat my food, and that's success. Like hitting my calories in a day is like success. That's awesome. I've eaten what I needed to eat. I don't care like how I got there, but I want to clean that up a little bit in the next 3 months. And then it's also just like getting to the gym and getting those sessions in, how and when I can.
Right. Wow. So it sounds like the process of this kind of recovery phase, it was kind of a slow burn. It was like a gradually, like, beginning was really tough. And then gradually you kind of started to, like, you had that moment where you were diagnosed with depression, ADHD, you got medications for that. Your eating started to normalize a little bit over time, having like more structure around your eating, I suppose, especially if your appetite was down. You mentioned you lost 12 pounds from having your appetite down, I suppose. But overall, like it, and then you eventually got a little bit more fire going back to the gym again. You mentioned you started training with your partner, and it became more exciting. So it was kind of like a slow burn, like things were just adding up over time. Was there a point where you got to, and you thought to yourself, like, hey, like, now I'm good? One of the reasons why I ask is I've always found, like, for myself too, and I didn't have the same kind of health challenges in the preps that I've done before. But I've always found for myself, it's taken a while before I've felt like my regular self after a season ends. And I think the last one, even though it was my most successful prep, I would say, I think it took me probably, like, in retrospect, like 6 months before, like, I felt like eating was normal. Mentally, I was like kind of a normal person again. And I still love training. I was still training hard. That kind of stayed the same because I don't know what that is, but I think, like, for me, it took at least 6 months before I was like, just, yeah, I'm like at least 95% normal now. Yeah. But what do you think? How long do you think it took, like, where you to the point where you can look back and say, yeah, I'm pretty much recovered at this point?
That was a good 6 months for me too. Yeah, and it was just a lot of like the emotional side for me, and I think that it's different for every person. And I love talking with you about this because you're like, yeah, my gym stayed the same. And for me, it was like my gym super didn't stay the same. And that was really abnormal for me. And we're still both bodybuilders. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to just shame ourselves into like a certain level of box, especially post show, where we have so many expectations around, you know, wow, I think that because I've had so much life experience in this way, that my post show recovery is going to be like totally fine. 2 months and I'm back to it. And some people have that, and that's incredible. And then that same athlete will go compete in a year or two and then have like a 6-month recovery. Or there's some people that don't recover after like a year. So I think like loosening expectations around like the actual timeline and just giving space for like, it's going to be what it's going to be. And I'm going to do as much as I can to help it along the way helps. But I was 6 months pretty much for myself as well.
Yeah, no, that's actually sparking something. It's making me think of something, is to your point, kind of just like letting that phase run its course. Because
Mhm.
I've seen it, I've seen it um, suggested by some coaches, and perhaps they've got good reason for it, to set their athletes up with like strict parameters after a show ends. And
Mhm.
sometimes that is really, really, really helpful.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't seem to be. And actually I've found like I don't do terribly well with super strict parameters, especially
Mhm.
with food. That's what really gets me after a show, like
Yeah.
pretty common with athletes.
Yeah.
Uh, but I've always kind of had that mentality for myself too, like, hey, like I'm gonna be eating a lot more for a while, and I'm gonna kind of just let it run its course, and that seems to be what's worked best for me. And I'm thinking about the alternative, which could have been something like, okay, we need to make sure we're not gaining more than a pound per month from this point,
Yeah.
or 2 pounds per month, and then that would be like, I think I would go crazy if I did something like that, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Mhm.
But I think that goes totally in alignment with your point.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So now here we are. You're several months into what you can confidently call your improvement season. Things are kind of normalized. You're getting after it. You're aiming to add more density to your frame, thinking about quad growth, various parts of your physique developing. And you're thinking of competing in 2027?
Mhm. At the earliest, I'm open to that being flexible.
Cool. Something that I'm hoping I can ask you about is, I'm curious to know, like, this is a little bit of a digression in the conversation, but I'm
Mhm.
wondering more about your background with the whole bodybuilding thing. What was it that drew you into this whole, like, I want to build muscle and get on stage and diet and like do all the show stuff? Like, what was it that initially got you into this whole natural bodybuilding thing?
Oh man, I love this question so much. I could yap about this forever. So funny enough, my background screen on my phone is actually a picture of me as like a toddler doing a front double bicep on a beach. I grew up. My dad was in the army. Then he sold fitness equipment, was a trainer, and then the majority of his career was in firefighting for the city of Edmonton. And I had a bunch of like golden era bodybuilding books in the little like rusted out home gym in the basement in the house that I grew up in. I actually have all of them in my bookshelf, like the old like when women first went to the gym, and it was like you're in like little cat heels and like the leg warmers, and it was just like a little bit of something something, and like the golden era, like the encyclopedia of bodybuilding. Like I have all those old things. Eat to Win, like I've got all the old stuff, so always around it. And then growing up, I was a competitive gymnast for 10 years. And so, especially because like I'm littler framed and I had a hard time getting food and I was always really shredded. So it's like you could see the three heads of my quad through like a pair of leggings that I wore at like 10. And for me,
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. I was very lucky that the gym club that I was with what didn't push for any like body requirements at all, because I know that that's really popular with like gymnastics and dance, but we weren't pressured into that at all. But I was so used to being strong. I'm also the youngest of like my entire family, and it was always like I wanted to be like I was that girl that's like when the teacher was like, oh, like who I need 3 strong boys to help me carry chairs. I was like arms full of chairs, like I got it. Like I wanted to be that strong person. I really respect strength. As I've gotten older, I respect internal and external strength, but I thought that they were one and the same when I was a kid. I saw a lot of really muscly people that like had really great values, and so I was really drawn to like being muscular. So I was a competitive gymnast for 10 years. I played high level volleyball as well after that, and I made the decision to not play like post secondary volleyball to pursue studies. And at that time, I've always wanted to compete, and I was like, this is really cool. This seems like a cool thing to do. But I knew that for how much I was training and how busy I was for my sports, I wouldn't have the recovery time that would be required to bodybuild. And so once I left volleyball, when I left grade 12, I was like, ooh, I can finally do this. And so while I was in college, I worked out like a gremlin. Like I lived in the college gym, and it was so awesome. And then once I left university and got a job and like, oh, I have the funds to do this, COVID actually happened. And then after COVID, so I'm a little newer to the actual competition side when it comes to like the lifespan of like what bodybuilding is. But I was like, ooh, now is my time. Like, screw it. Let's pick a show. I had some life changes. Like I went sober when I was 19, and it was like, this is awesome. Like this aids in this lifestyle. Screw it. Let's find a coach and let's do it. And I was just like guns a-blazing, really passionate, and like, let's go do this thing. And I just like fell in love with the sport for both the internal and external strength layers to it.
What do you think when you say you fell in love with it? Can you elaborate on that? Like what was it? I know you mentioned like your personality as you grew up, like you were the person that wanted to like you're carrying like, hey, the teacher would say, hey, can you guys help out? And you're carrying like all these chairs with you. Like you're kind of drawn to that strength. Sounds like your dad was in the fitness world to an extent. And like, so you had all these bodybuilding books in the background, and like, so like you kind of grew up with this. But can you elaborate on like, what do you think it is that leaves you really drawn to it, really loving it, as you just noted?
There's two layers for sure. The first one was what initially drew me in was the pursuit. Like you look at life, and you know, when you're a young person, you're deciding what to do in university, you're trying to plan your life, and you just see these layers of just like, wow, I'm just gonna like get a job and sit, and like that's gonna be my life for 40 years. And the idea that there was something along the sidelines that like you could pursue on a long-term basis that would be challenging and grow you was like so enticing. Like you catch that bug a little bit and you're like, oh my gosh, I could be a superhero in my spare time. Like that, it was so cool to me. And the second part is community, being surrounded by people who are also pursuing. Like you are who you surround yourself by. And that to me was like so enticing. I got introduced to the WNBF. I'm very thankful that I did. It was super, super like happenstance. I knew somebody who knew a coach who knew a different coach that was with the WNBF, and I started with them. And I went to all the like workshops that I could. I went to every online seminar. I just wanted to know everything because it was like the pursuit was enticing. And then being around the people that were pursuing, I was like, oh, this is so unique and so special. And like, I need to be around this because this is what I've always wanted, was just to have something to pursue alongside people. Like, so that's what really like has like hook, line, and sinker why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, I love asking that question too. It's cool to get to hear, because at the end of the day, this whole like natural bodybuilding thing, like it's we do have that cool thing in common where, as you noted, we are all trying to like better ourselves, and we're grinding away. We're trying to push our limits, improve ourselves in a very specific kind of strange way to the rest of the world. And we all have that in common. And it's interesting to know why, like, why is that so appealing to us who pursue that? And also to your point as well, with the community, it's like, well, it's very cool to be able to connect with other people that are also kind of doing this thing. When you did, so was it 20, what was the year that you did your first prep?
22.
2022. Okay. Did you run into the same kind of issues as the second one, or was it smoother overall? It was a good experience. It was a like overall better experience, smoother. We'll say smoother experience.
Yeah, it was all the way around. And I loved it. I think I went in. I think one of the things that helped it actually be smoother was I went in with no expectations. I kind of argue that like your second prep is way harder than your first, because your first it's hard because like, yeah, you've never kind of done this and you've never been this hungry, you've never been this tired, and layers to that. But your second prep, you think it's going to look like your first prep. So you go in with expectations and compare yourself to yourself. And like, that's not inherently a bad thing to do, but I just think it's just like, oh, it's probably going to look different, and that's okay. So the first prep was awesome for me.
Did you, when you actually did the show, did you kind of immediately, you got on stage, you finished, and then was it like, hey, I'm really hooked to competing, or was it like, okay, I need to decompress a little bit, and then I'll think about it, and then maybe I'll want to compete again? Or was it like, what was your initial thought?
It was funny. I actually got hooked to competing even before I stepped on stage. As funny as that sounds, like of course you can't know what stage is like until you're on stage. But for me, it was like, even before I was on stage, I was like, I love everything about this process. Even the bits that are like, oh, I would love to, like, if this didn't include this, sweet. But like the trying to eat so much in your off season. But anyway, but like I was so bought in way before I stepped on stage. And then I stepped on stage and I was like, that was awesome. And yeah, let me do it again. And with no urgency, like it was this thing of like, I know I'm going to do this for the next 10 years of my life minimum. So yeah, like let's just keep rocking.
That's awesome. So for everyone listening, I want to ask you about coaching your athletes and the posing coaching work that you do. But for everyone listening and watching, you have an amazing coaching business. Like from my perspective, I see pretty regularly that the athletes, both your posing athletes, for example, like they're winning posing awards like left, right, and center. Like they seem to be some of the best prepared athletes on stage. Your prep athletes seem to have like an amazing experience. They all do really well from what I've seen from afar. So you've got a really successful coaching business, and I'm wondering, at what point did you start like working concretely in the fitness industry? Was it like you graduated college, got right into it, or was it like you started around the time that you first started prepping, or after your first prep, or what did that look like?
It's a great question. And so I actually started coaching when I was about 16. I coached volleyball. So I was invited to a lot of summer camps. I was actually invited out to play volleyball in England with I was a captain of a team from North America that we all kind of got to go, and, it was like a development camp. So I've coached volleyball since I was 16. Then when I graduated high school, when I was back home from college, I was the sprinting and jumping coach for my local high school's track team, because that's what I also did. And so I always loved coaching. I think that like leadership, fellowship, I don't love that word, but it's fine. Like leadership and community and growing others is really important, because that's literally the only reason why like I am where I am, is because of all the mentorship that I've received in my life. I was there, and then I went to school for nursing and was like, this isn't quite for me. I was a mental health and addictions nurse, and left that shortly, and then was like, well, I just need a job, so I'll just work. I worked in accounting and human resources, went back to school for that, and was like, oh, this isn't quite my thing either. And when I was doing HR, I was like, I actually had a dream. As funny as that sounds, like I had a dream that I was a coach again. And I talked to my coach about it, and he was like, why not do it? So I actually got back into personal training because I've always made programs for people, and like I've always loved it. I made programs for myself for years. And so I actually got back into it, got a handful of certifications so that I could feel a little more legit and like start to do that. And then like, a referral here and a referral there, a referral here and a referral there. And I had like this like side hustle as just training lifestyle clients online. There was a few people that I would go train in their basements, which was like super fun. Super legal, super legal. And then what actually got into my foot in the door with going more into bodybuilding coaching was the posing side of things. So because I was at all these workshops and like loving it, and with the background in gymnastics, I loved like performance and like presentation. And so going to these things, there was one clinic that I was at where it's like, hey, we actually don't have like a figure coach. And the person running it was like, hey, I've seen you at enough of these. You know what you're doing. Why don't you coach? And I was like, me? Are you sure? And so I ended up coaching, and it was so much fun. And I was like, this is great. And they're like, the person running the clinic was like, you should come back and do this again. And so I started that. And then I had a few people have great experiences at a clinic, and then was like, hey, can I work with you one-on-one? And I was like, sure, like that would be super fun. Let's do this. And they're like, how much do you want me to pay you? I was like, you want to pay me? And then I was like, oh, sure. Like $20 is good, I guess. Like it was great. And then I loved it so much. And I love communicating with people and teaching people. And it was just like so awesome. I was like, this is great. And so I wanted to learn more about, I'm a figure and fit body athlete myself, like figure physique, figure fit body, depending on which federation you compete with. And I was like, I'm great at this. I know my niche. Let me learn more. So I started to like research more, started to go in to more clinics and more online seminars with different posing coaches in North America, different federations, and just like got my hands into a few different things and was like, this is really cool. And then just, it kind of took off. And yeah, I guess I'm good at what I do because I have an eye for, you know, when like two pictures are kind of crooked and you're like, okay, well, they're crooked a little bit. Like you need to fix them. And people are like, it's fine. You're like, do you not see that they're crooked? Apparently I have the eye for that a little bit, which really helps in posing coaching. So that plus being able to articulate to people either whether they have like any background in gym, like so that you can have like anatomical movement terms in your sessions, or it's just like, hey, you need to make an armpit fart. And that's like the cue that they remember on stage for figure athletes. Like, I don't care which one you take, but the ability to like communicate with people and figure out how people like work is so fun. So I just love it. And that's where I kind of got my foot in the door with it.
That's so cool. I think it's so cool how you got into it, especially with the posing coaching. Like they had, you ran the workshop, and then people came up to you afterwards, and they're asking how much. Like, hey, can I pay you? You're still like, hey, $20. This is sweet. It kind of reminds me, like thinking about the 3DMJ guys again. Like they've talked about when the first year that they started taking on like coaching clients themselves. It was Jeff that told me they made like $400 for the whole year, but they weren't sad about it. They were like, whoa, this is sweet. We're doing this thing that we really, we're making money doing something that we like. And then after that, they did actually blow up. But no, it kind of reminds me of your story too. It's like, you ended up doing this thing. It kind of got a surprising start. It's like, hey, I love doing this. And you're really skilled at it. You have a level of natural proclivity. But yeah, no, that's so cool. And now here you are, and you have like, I mean, it's very cool to get to see so many of your posing clients do so well. All of your clients do so well. So
thank you.
On that note, maybe that's actually a good place to end for now.
Sweet.
I want to let everyone know, again, you've got an amazing business. So my question is for you, for anyone that is looking for help with posing or prep, or if you're taking on lifestyle clients as well too, where is the best place to find you, to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Instagram is the best place to find me. Laza Holla on Instagram, LOZZAHOLLA. That is my handle. You can either DM me, or I have a link in my bio that you can book like a complimentary discovery call for us to just like chat and just figure out, what do you need? What can I do for you? If I can do anything for you, or where can I direct you so that you're in the right hands, is the best place to find me.
Amazing. And I'm going to link your Instagram in the description below. So if you guys want to reach out to Lauren, click the link. It'll be super easy. You can go through it that way. Thank you so much for this, Lauren. And thanks for sharing your story. I think that getting to hear not just like how you fell in love with the whole bodybuilding thing, but also like the challenging 2024 season that you went through, the health struggles, the emotional and mental struggles that you experienced, stemming partially from the health stuff, the physical health stuff. I think that's gives a lot of people relatability and is very helpful for a lot of people to hear. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I've really enjoyed the conversation too.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome.